halving joint by hand. We've marked up, we've got our joint marked out, got to go down halfway. Quite a bit of material to mark out. We've got an angle. We want to make it accurate. If you want to get it really good, you need to spend a bit of time. Instead of just plonking in with my saw on this and hoping, I want to make it maybe repeatable. You've got more than one of these maybe to do. How about making up something just as a simple guide board for your saw cuts for the outside. We're going to use this as a guide to be able to run the saw along to do those outside cuts to get them nice and accurate. We've got our bevel set to the angle we've been using. So we've positioned the workpiece on the bench, we've got the cutout up, that's good. We've got the board we've just made over the top lined up with our cut line. Clamp down, won't move, that's important. I've just put a little bit of candle wax, so that'll help it glide. I can also do a little bit on the board, so that reduces the friction. So in here we can then sit things in, get onto there and feel that they're going to sit nicely. And again, with your saw, if you've got tenon saw, finger out the side will help. You've got to get your body angle to line up with the direction you want to go. So you've got our two break lines either end, we've used the guide. Now it's really just a case we can do some straight cuts. I've got to come round in a second and check where I am down to my depth. So in here we can do the same. You could keep your guide in if you wanted. So we're done with the saw, we've got our parallel cuts, a bit of pine this side, just giving me a depth stop idea line. So I've just grabbed chisel, mallet, okay? I'm going to start with actually the bevel upside down. We can start this side, I've got, made sure we're held nicely, we're not coming all the way down to the line. Going to break those fibres off. This stage we've still got our halfway pencil line, okay? We're knocking this out quite aggressively. We're getting quite big chunks come off. We've got the break line at either end. We're still using, up to that stage, the chisel upside down. That'll stop it driving in, going deeper and doing more damage. Then we can start to clean this up a little bit more and we're going to turn the chisel over, use the top and start to cut across. So this time we could use router. We're going to do one of the joints with router. Okay, so we're going to look at that. I've made simple jig, but actually even the router, the cutters, all play a part in what you're going to get. First thing we've got to look at is obviously the router cutters. They're quite short. I don't need a lot of length for what we're working on depth-wise. I've got 1/2 inch shank. You could go down to 1/4, but you're taking quite a heavy cut. On here, this cutter actually has what's classed as bottom cut. So we've got our cutter face, but actually this will also cut on the bottom. This is angled away, so we can actually in reality drill a hole and then widen it. The other cutter we have doesn't have that bottom cut aspect, so this is very flat across the middle. If we try and plunge down with this, it won't go. It won't drill a hole in reality. This is only usable coming in from the side and working along the board. Even that choice of cutter is quite an important part to look at. So for what we want, I want something with bottom cut that allows me to go in and then remove that material. First thing, just to make it easier, we've got our badge name. We also got these little bar lines up through here. That's actually a depth line where you need to be holding in the collet. We turn it round, there's also a K line the other side, that's giving you a good mark. But in reality, 2/3 of the shank need to be held in the router. When we set the cutter depth, we can move this up and down. Alright, on our board, we did our scribe line to give us a halfway point. We can actually use that. I can actually say that's actually my depth of cut maximum is in the middle of those two lines. From here we have a depth adjustment bar, so I've got a lock lever. I can adjust the bar coming down. That's going to give us a repeatable stop, so we know we can go down to that as a set place. So if you're doing more than one of these, you could have them set up. You could also use it now, so you can say I can do half a cut, don't need all of it in one heavy go, or I could bring it back down fully, maximum depth of cut. I've made really simple jig board, and I regularly get asked by people, what's a jig? Can you make a jig board for a routing demo? But what's the jig doing? Because you've got to have a problem to solve to make the jig. So on here, all I've got some buttons screwed together. I've got the angle we require. That matches the angle on our sliding bevel. We have things screwed on quite accurately. I'll get to that in a second. And we've got a lamp stop board. So if I put it on there, I can slide that up. Everything lines up. You've got a couple of options. You could sit the router on top of the board, but that means more depth to cut and more instability. So on here, we're actually going to sit the router on the middle. We're going to work off the outside face. So what we need to know then, maximum diameter of the cutter. You're going to measure from the cutter tip, and you might need to turn it around a little bit to the outside edge of where the router is flat. Add on either side. Means I've got the same offset, but the bigger flat will make it more accurate for me to pull and push through. I'm going to start a little bit more central, probably 2 passes to come across, and then gradually widen that cut out from the centre, then turn it around, we'll come back around the other way. Now the pine bit reduces the breakout either side. Might want to clean this out. It's pretty good though actually. But if you have any rough spots, we can go with Japanese rasp just to clean up any fibres on there, help flatten it off. There's not a lot to get on that. Just going to soften the internal joint corner. Got to look at which these are. So just taking that hard shoulder off to make it easier to slide it on. So another option that's become really popular in the last few years, something like pull over Mitre Saw. Right? Quite common, easy to use. We can use this for trenching, but the sad thing with most of these is the back of the blade doesn't clear the fence when we do a trenching operation. So you end up with a curved bit at the back. But we can space off the fence a little bit. That gets rid of that issue. From there, we can put our board in. And again, to make it easier, make it more repetitive, so you don't have to stop and try and figure out where you are on your pencil line, why not set some stops in either side? So all I've done on here, a piece of plywood, G-clamped on the bench, so it tells me I've got that end, come down to here, down to the other, done. I can set my height adjuster, so we're not going all the way through. And obviously check your halfway point is important, and which way you're cutting, and you're trenching out the right side. But Japanese rasp, fantastic to clean it up. Not too much break out on the edges. That'll clean it nice and clean, look. Now, need to make sure you get this right. Now on here, we've got an adjustable crown guard. We can move it up and down. Legally requirements for the UK, we've got to have the crown guard in place. We also have your riving knife in behind the blade. They both need to be in situ when you're doing this sort of thing. We can adjust the crown guard up and down. I can still have it in situ whilst we do the cut. Well, the aspect that the crown guard setup we've got on here is adaptable. Yes, it will fit different saws. So maybe that's a long-term option if you want to get into doing rebates and halving joints on your table saw. First thing I want to do is set up my angles. So I've got my sliding bevel with that angle. I can set the fence. I've already done this a little bit. The guide on here even says 5 degrees, so I know I'm pretty good. But I can lay that down the blade and have a look at how it sits. Now I said the wood is 45mm. On here, we could use UJK height jig. So if I put this on next to, we've got an adjuster on here. I've got an on-off button. Let's take it down. Onto the bottom, I can lock this up just gently. I can reset this now to 0. Now I said my wood is 45mm in thick. We want half of, that's 22.5. I'm just gonna move my scale up a little bit. So at the moment I've come up to 31. I can bring this down, 21 in a little bit. Now I'm just going to undo the bolt I've done up, just turn the saw blade away from this, just to check our height. 21, coming up a bit. I said 22.34. We're trying to find the maximum diameter of the blade. We're setting things up still, so we've got our angle, we've got our fence. I've got my mark, I'm checking which bit we're taking out. That's important. So we're going to drop it back over. Now I can actually set a few other things up on the table saw that makes it easier as we get going. So I've got a line there and I'm going to bring this just forward a bit, up to the blade almost. I bought this side fence, so if we zoom up across here, out to here, that's now acting as a length stop. So that gives me a nice repeat cut and also guarantees I'm going to start and finish where I want. Likewise, if we slide this back, we come to the length stop on the fence. That's lining up with the cut for the other end. So between those, that's my maximum amount of movement I need. Again, something table saw, you might find that easier to approach than setting up a shoulder plane. You might not have shoulder plane, but Japanese rasp, fantastic to clean it up. Not too much break out on the edges. That'll clean it nice and clean, look.